My very first guest here at BuzzTown is actually a really good friend of mine. He's an established bass player. He's played with the likes of Kevin Dubrow of Quiet Riot. He's played with Jani of Warrant. He's played with Gene Loves Jezebel and the Bullet Boys. Good afternoon and welcome to BuzzTown. If you're as new with us as we are with you, please consider clicking that like and that subscribe button so that you'll get notification when we put new stuff out. All right, like I said, our very, very first guest here at BuzzTown happens to be a friend of mine. He is an established bass player. He has played with the likes of Kevin Dubrow of Quiet Riot, Jani Lane of Warrant, numerous shows he's done with Gene Loves Jezebel, in fact, how I met him. And before the pandemic, he just got off tour with the Bullet Boys, where he even actually laid out all the bass lines on their last 2 LPs. Who am I talking about? Chad MacDonald. Minor audio difficulties earlier. Chad, you there?
We've got audio. This is my first time as well doing a podcast interview, and I'm delighted, honored, and flattered that you would choose me to launch your BuzzTown podcast studios. And I don't often try to talk about myself, but that is going to be the point of this. So it's going to be fun to revisit some memories and experiences and bring us up to the present moment, which is the best place to be.
Absolutely. Now, where are you right now? Like, you're hard to get a hold of. You're hard to pin down.
Yeah. Well, right now I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, which is my home. It's not my hometown, but it has been my home for 17 years. 2003, I moved here. At the moment, I'm at a friend's home with a great setup because we had a false start with our podcast. I was in the park with my bicycle and a makeshift cell phone thing that almost worked, but we had an audio issue. So
we had a little
here, and they were kind enough to let me use this. Then actually, it turns out great because now I don't have to worry about bugs and getting kicked out of the park after hours and so on. So it was a silver lining that it didn't work out, actually.
I like going through those trials and tribulations because that shit's not going to happen again, right? We've gone through all the audio bugs that could have happened and 220 events. So let's just so when I got a hold of you and I said,
Arizona, by the way, that's where I am. Yep, go ahead, Steve.
I said, man, there's nothing. I want to do an interview with you. You're like, you're almost like to like a celebrity status where like I'd have to pay for this, down the road. So when I got a hold of you and you were like, hey man, I don't know if there's anything out there. I said, I want to do some homework on you. And you were like, sure, but I don't think you're going to find a whole lot out there. But actually, there's a lot of good stuff out there. But there isn't really a nitty gritty on who Chad is. And so let's just get right down to that.
Sure.
Your hometown, Hartford, Connecticut, by the way.
Hartford, Connecticut I use that as a reference as my hometown. I was born in Hartford. I'm from a suburban borderline farm town just outside of Hartford called Canton, which is a lovely little New England town, which I'm proud to be from, and I'm glad I grew up there. For various reasons, I'm glad I left, but I do visit when I can, and it's where my value system was established, and I'm glad I'm kind of a small town boy in a big city that's worked well for me and continues to. And so yeah, that's Hartford. Hartford I use as a reference because most people have heard of it, and then I say that's my home base, my hometown. My home base is now Arizona, but yeah.
Well, for us Southern guys, I don't guess I realized it was actually spelt like that, and how you'd say it, Connecticut, or you see like Connecticut. But that's cool.
Most people can't spell that. Mm-hmm. That's an anglicized Native American term that I believe means land of the long tidal river. And it was maybe Pequot, and the English converted it into English and made Connecticut out of it, and most people can't spell it properly.
So we just destroy it, Connecticut.
Yeah. There's the extra T in there, and it's a small state, but most people know about it because of insurance. It's the insurance capital of the world.
Nice. I was going to tell you.
At one time it was, and maybe it's probably still is.
I was going to tell you, I was really punking you to try and sell you insurance once I got you on here after all that work. Now, being a bass player myself, when did you actually realize, that bass was like your instrument? You know what I mean?
Well, bass chose me, not the other way around.
Okay.
In fact, music chose me. I was a dishwasher in my first job. I still look back on, I think I was 15. I don't know how I was legally employed, but I think I was. In terms of taxes, it's funny, I don't remember, but I don't even think I was 16, which I think was the age. They must have made an exception, but I worked in this kitchen right down the road from where I lived with, growing up in my mom's place, going to school, and a couple of the guys that I worked with played instruments, and I went over with a camera. I had a little Instamatic camera to take pictures and hang out with them. I thought it was cool they played instruments, and that was how. And then next thing I know, one of the guys literally put a bass in my hands and says, "Well, here, play bass." I said, "Well, I can't play. I've never played an instrument. I don't know what." He says, "I remember." He said, "It's real easy. I'll show you. Follow the dots." And he pointed the dots. That's how I learned. That's how I still play today. And we played Louie Louie. We played
oh my God,
all the 3-chord 1, 4, 5 songs.
Great.
And he pointed the dots, and I got the bug right then and there. I was hooked, making a cacophonous noise. I think I played through a little combo guitar amp, so it was already distorted like Lemmy the first moment I played. And I was hooked. The energy of the whole thing was right there. And even though I didn't, this hand didn't really quite know what to do.
Yeah,
I was hooked, and I stuck with it. I've never put it down ever since then.
And you had the camaraderie with the guys you were playing with were like egging you on and making you feel good. And
yeah, there's something to be said when everybody's a beginner and you're kind of growing together. And
yeah, that was going to be my next question. It's like, when was the first time you actually jammed with somebody, and how did that feel?
The first time I played bass, essentially I was in a band the very first time.
Bam.
And I wasn't really invited into an existing band. It was something that just metamorphosed out of these guys that we all worked in the kitchen, and then I think I was the one kind of motivating, hey, let's get together again, Tuesday night or after school. And then and then along came another kid that was a pretty accomplished drummer. And that was when the whole thing, from that day forward, I've been spoiled and played with drummers that are usually better than me, that pushes me and that's how I learned. I had to keep up. It's a good way. It's like if you play tennis, play with somebody that's better than you, and your game will get better.
Poetic.
Same thing with music. If you're playing with a great drummer who's grooving, you gotta jump in and you gotta step it up. And
That's right.
I've been spoiled almost from day one, and I'm thrilled that that's been the case in my musical life and career. And it's it's been it was a gift. I'm glad that those guys asked me to come over that day. And
yeah, isn't that cool?
put a
You
bass
look
in my
back at
hand.
that and like, damn it, what if that didn't happen?
And I remember too. It was a 3/4 sized bass. It was red. It was made by Cort, C-O-R-T.
I have one
The
today.
very first one. Okay, this is boy. I mean, it might have even been made in the 70s. This particular bass, and at one point, I think it fell over, and the G tuning peg broke off, and I didn't even know what a tuning peg was. So that string just never got tuned for the first few months, and then eventually I traded it in for a Kramer bass, which was twice the size and twice the instrument, and that got me up and running. And then I realized, well, the equipment is important, and you get what you pay for. And,
well, dude.
And then I eventually got a Fender P bass, and that was a game changer. It was
yeah,
Lake
really?
Placid blue, beautiful bass. I wish I still had a lot of things, including that one.
I hope to upgrade to that someday. But I look at it and go, well, how can a bass be that different, man? But you hear a lot about it, and I mean, you get what you pay for.
But at the same time, it's like Jack White. You know, Jack White's preferred guitars are another man's trash. You know, they're plastic and the necks are warped. If it's right for you, then it's right. That's what matters.
Dude.
You know, and especially if you're making your own music. If you were a session player and you showed up with the Cort bass that I had when I learned, well, maybe there'd be an issue. But if it's your music and it's right for you, then
I still have my Cort today, man. I pulled it out. Just it doesn't have any strings on it, but that's a lot in common right there. And then I went to a bridge. I went to a Bridgecraft. I bought one out of a pawn shop.
Yeah.
Wow. I can't find them anymore. I bought one out of a pawn shop. A story about it later, like when I met you.
Okay.
That was bought to burn and smash on stage.
Yes.
But yeah, and then it turned out to be my favorite one. It's a piece of crap. But
I don't know that I've ever smashed. I never did the Paul Simon on the cover of London Calling thing. I've seen that actual bass though. It's in one of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fames with the strings and the broken neck, and they kind of bolted it into from the cover of London Calling when he smashed the bass, and that was one of the coolest artifacts I've ever seen.
Do they make those particular ones that he smashes like out of balsa or something different, or pre-break?
Well,
it,
that's a legitimate. That was legitimate. That photograph of him smashing that bass was legitimate, and it took him a bass. That's a Fender P bass is a beefy thing, and it took some effort for him to actually break it and do the damage that he did do it. Paul Stanley, they know, at the end of Kiss's show, he has he swaps out to a plywood, cheap guitar, and then smashes it, and then they used to throw it in the crowd. Now I think he sells it. They sell the broken guitar at the meet and greet or something. But it's probably it's not. It's not a studio worthy guitar. It's a prop.
I was afraid of trying it and not being able to break it on stage. When I look back. And how do you do it in five?
So you bought that to smash, but you never smashed it.
I did, and I told my bandmates, I'm like, listen, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna at the last freaking song, because nobody's done it around here. I'm gonna smash it, and so go into a long, drawn out, and I'm gonna smash it, and then I'm gonna throw it up, and then when it hits the ground, that's it.
That's it.
And I mean, it sounded so right, but when it came time to do it, it's just no.
Yeah, I'm with you. I liked it. And, if you watch Townsend, old footage of him. The best is when it stays plugged in and it's making just an ungodly cacophonous noise, like Hendrix with the lighter fluid. That's amazing stuff. But I mean, to top that, and it's like as a bassist to top the cover of London Calling, we try to be cool, but we ain't gonna be that cool.
No.
So I'll leave it to those guys. I've never smashed one.
You pull it off pretty good, man. I'll tell you, my friend. So okay, so now you're playing bass now. Who are you now starting to gravitate toward, inspiration wise? Who is like one of your favorite? Oh man, in the early part.
Oh, you mean okay? You're talking early.
So now you're playing.
One of my favorites then and now is Dee Ramone, and I've had people question, or look at me quizzically with that one, but I had a vinyl album, still have it. Ramones Road to Ruin. It's my favorite Ramones album, 1978. And the photos on that, on the back cover is the Ramones on a stoop in New York, but there's a live photo in there of Dee Dee with a white P bass. I always thought it was cool. He had his Ampeg SVT heads on the stage. I always wanted to know why he did that. And I don't know if it was because he was so rowdy so it didn't fall, and he had a curly cord and his black leather jacket. Yep. And the black leather jacket and just like the bowl cut haircut. And I just love the music. And so that was already in my head the first time I played a bass. I was really into that record and that guy. And boy, I don't think I'd even seen them maybe on an MTV video at that time. But then to this day, if you watch live Ramones, particularly in their heyday, the early phase,
oh yeah,
that guy will make you want to pick up a bass guitar and rock a crowd because the energy is amazing. Like there's 1977, I want to say New Year's Eve, they played in London. It's a legendary show because all the guys that went on to form all the other UK punk bands, they all claimed that they were at that show and they had heard about this band from New York City, and it was the Ramones, and they came over, and it was either New Year's Eve or it was 4th of July, or maybe it was both. There's two legendary shows, and anyway, the guys from the Clash were there, the Future Sex Pistols were there, and then there's footage of it, and they made a live album, the Ramones, It's Alive. And just the energy is infectious, and it still is. And like I sat and watched that, their whole show is like 29 minutes or something. And it's unbelievable. I was mesmerized. I watched it. This is something that happened, 45 years ago. And I'm just watching this and I'm just riveted. And I'm like, everybody's killer in the band. I love the songs, but Dee Dee, that's it. So I took to the bass quickly and largely because of that. And the way he jumped and just the way he played. And, when in terms of his actual bass playing on the records, he just follows the guitar, but that worked for them. And it wasn't about that. And he was the main songwriter. And I love everything about Dee Ramone, except, what took him out.
Yeah.
Took him out.
They're peaking. They're peaking at a time you're just learning and being influenced, man. So that was perfect timing.
Yeah, I mean, their peak would have been late 70s, early. I started in the mid to late 80s, but they were still together. And Dee Dee, I never did get to see the Ramones live with Dee Dee. He had left in '89, which was the first time I saw him. So I saw him with CJ. He was his replacement, who was a good candidate for the role, but there's nothing quite like the OG, But Dee Dee left to save his own life. That's why he left the band. He knew if he stayed on the road, he was gonna drink and drug himself to death.
Yeah.
So he left for a good, noble reason and continued to write songs for them. But anyway, yeah. So that was a good time to be a kid and a good time to be learning music because everything was vibrant. MTV.
Oh, it's perfect.
80s was a great time. It really was. I mean,
I miss it so much. I miss it so much.
it was a good time to be a young person in America, in that part of America, and everything just the stars aligned. Now I can look back at that with that sort of through that prism and say, man, I was fortunate. Um, I was fortunate then. I'm fortunate now, but it was a good time to be a young person in America. It was a good time to start a band. There was still that carrot, that golden egg of like, hey, you start a band
Yep.
and you can be a big rock star and you can make millions of dollars with your music. That sort of golden egg is a little different now. And maybe it's a lot different now, but that was a motivator for me and my guys to get good and to literally practice in a literal woodshed. So when people say, hey, go woodshed those songs, I had the
Go
experience of
woodshed
actually,
those songs.
or it's a term that I like because I actually spent time in a literal woodshed with 3 kerosene heaters
Did you
and
name that woodshed? Did it
I don't
have a
think we
name?
ever. No, we didn't name it like Skinner, but it was there. It was like our version of the way Skinner had the Hell House, and they had to worry about the heat and the
Yeah.
humidity. We had to worry about the cold, and
Oh, then
but we got through it.
woodshed just fit perfect then. Perfect name for it. Woodshed.
Yeah, it was literally a woodshed, a tool shed, at my friend Dale's um, mom's property, and it was unbelievable because we could play on a school night, not worry about the noise. It was out in the country. It was right on a pond, and we could leave our amps in there. Everything was safe and locked up, and that's how. And we were writing songs. We were playing a lot of the covers of the day, but we were actually also working on original songs, and people liked what we were doing. And we made this cassette tape and circulated it around. I think it had 4 songs on it, songs that we wrote.
That's cool.
And we pooled our money. We went to a local, pretty primitive, but a local studio, and we made a tape. It was exciting.
That is
It was
cool.
fun.
That's a good visual, man. I can see it right now.
And sometimes people hit me up and say, I found your tape. And I think about that, and it's about 30 years ago. And some people still say they listen to it and they like it. I haven't heard it in many years, but maybe we'll put that on a future podcast. We can play some
Yeah,
of that
man.
stuff.
I'd love to hear that.
Yeah.
What was the name of that band? Did you guys even name the band, or was it just the band?
Yes, the
Woodshed
very
band.
first band was called Road Pizza. That was the very first band. And then that band kind of morphed into a little bit more serious version of somewhat of the similar band. I think we swapped drummers and singers. And then that band became Third Rail. And there was tapes circulating of Road Pizza and Third Rail. I'd really have to dig back to look at which was which. But some of the same guys, including myself, was in both. And I don't think there's much at all online about either of those groups. And Third Rail, I think maybe a hip hop group took that name. We never trademarked the names, but it was again, it was an exciting time, and it felt like the world was our oyster. It was, and it was our oyster.
You're young and you can play an instrument.
That's right. And I'm in America, and I'm in a city in between these 2 giant cities, Boston and New York. They're both accessible, and bands are getting record deals. They are getting. Back then, it was all about the deal and the advance. And I look at it now and I realize, well, that's why everyone's got to do it DIY style now. And it's not that there's not good artists out there. It's just that they've got to do it on their own, and they've got to compete with a million other people. Whereas in the days of our predecessors, like you got Jimmy Page on your wall there. I mean, that was in an era when you'd find the right guys and they'd go away literally into the mountains with this huge budget and catering, and then they just work on music till it was ready for the world to hear it. And that's why we got the Doors and Led Zeppelin and all that great stuff. And the industry, in my early days, that was still there, and which I'm glad, because that was a motivator. We had our heroes to look up to inspire, to learn and play harder, get good. And I look back on it, and we silk screening our own T-shirts and
Yeah.
making posters and flyering the high school. And I look back at that with absolute just charm of, I'm so glad I did that and lived through that and had that motivation and just ambition. It was, I, I didn't get to where I am with, it's a very small amount of talent. A lot of it's just tenacity and ambition. I stole that from Henry Rollins. He said, there's a lot more talented guys out here, but he's tenacious as hell. And that's what it takes. And I was tenacious to, at least get good enough to get the job done, and then get the guys motivated and rehearse and fine tune the show and the set and kind of fake it till you make it, but you're not gonna unless you're ambitious. And I always lucked out and ended up gravitating to the right people that were also ambitious, and if you're lucky, they're ambitious and more talented than you, or more focused, or have connections you don't have, and it becomes a greater than the sum of its parts, which is what all good music is, and all this great bands, even the ones you got on the wall, so much bigger than the sum of their parts, and you can't quantify it and qualify it. If you could, everybody'd be doing it. So the chemistry and the personality chemistry and the musical chemistry, that's all important stuff. And then there's just the magic of music itself, and no one knows what the hell it is, and no one can really define it. I mean, but it's wonderful to have it in my life and be part of it, and kind of have tapped into that wellspring of it all. And I consider it to be an infinite thing. It's endless. There's no limit. There's no end to it.
Well, it's kind of the reason why I'm putting this together, is because I want to talk to people that inspire others who are maybe looking, maybe I have somebody on here that someone can relate to you, because it's just funny how different people relate to different songs or a style, the way someone looks or the way they present themselves. It's just amazing the different tastes that people have.
Sure.
And I always gravitate, like, if you're a good person, you're gonna meet the good people, and you're gonna be with
that. You're absolutely right. Yeah, the law and power of attraction. And again, if you're all these guys, all these bands that we all like, and if you a lot of them, Guns N' Roses is one of the best, more modern examples. A bunch of greasy kids that relocated to the big city where stuff was happening, and somehow they found each other. There was different iterations of that band until they fell into the classic lineup. And if Duff, who's one of my influences and someone I admire greatly as a man and as a bass player,
and as a person,
but he had that ambition. I read his books, and I haven't met him though, but he's someone I would love to chat with, and he's an inspiration to me on many multiple levels. But he got in his beat up car and moved to LA, where things were happening. If he didn't, maybe he would have ended up in some Seattle punk band or what have you. But I did my own version of that. But he ended up going where he found the other guys that were as hungry as he was, and willing to, try anything to make it. And then they put all that into those songs, move to the city and everything. And but anyway, I had my own version of that in a time when that was still, I hope it's still relevant. I hope kids have something to shoot for. Like, again, does anybody want to pack up their car and move to New York City right now I heard New York City's all boarded up and there's nothing going on, and I'm sure the music industry is shut down. So it's a very weird time. But then again, young people today have opportunities we didn't have, like what we're doing right now. You had to go to bootleg shops and get VHS tapes to watch an interview with your favorite, which was cool and it was exciting. But
something is good. Something good's going to come out of this time right now.
Agree. I agree.
You got to be
Absolutely.
tough. It's going to make you tougher.
Yeah. And hopefully there's kids, I call them kids, young people. I was out riding my bike here in Phoenix and I rode by, this is before the shutdown and everything, but I remember it was late at night. I'm on one of the bike paths and I just hear this roar, this cacophony coming from what turned out to be a storage facility, storage shed. I'm like, yeah, that's a bunch of kids in a teenage garage band playing in that storage shed.
Oh,
And they
yeah.
probably shouldn't be doing this, or they probably bent the rules and just like I used to do. And I'm like, that's awesome. It didn't matter whether it sounded good. It just mattered to me that they were doing it.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, because I remember that. I remember bluffing, signing the paperwork for the storage shed of
Yeah.
whatever purposes were. And then we'd go in there and make music. And it was awesome,
Yeah.
and so it was like empowering and inspiring to hear that was still going on. And so maybe people have taken this opportunity, no school, no work or shut down, and they're making music. And tomorrow's, Led Zeppelin is ready to launch to the world. I hope so. I hope there's things like that going on,
Due to the pandemic, maybe. Now
you started your studio,
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
let's see what happens. So I did find some stuff on a band called The Flames, and I got to tell you, man, I really liked that sound that you guys are doing. I'm guessing it was the bar scene, right?
Yeah, that's a great example of what I had said before, of like, and your example of the right people have found each other.
Yeah,
that was a pretty organic occurrence of that band. The genesis of that band was it was the original was a trio, a 3-piece band, and I had met Matt Starr, who's now playing with Ace Frehley as a drummer, tremendous drummer. Oh, terrific drummer. And Mr. Big, of course, but nobody's really touring right now, but those
he played with Mr. Big.
Yep. He came in when Pat Torpey was unable to play a full night behind the kit because the late Pat Torpey passed away. And so they would have Matt on the actual kit and Pat would play percussion and sing. And so he was playing with Ace and with Mr. Big. I got to see him here in Phoenix with Mr. Big. I've yet to see him play with Ace other than online. But anyway, he was a terrific drummer back there in the Hartford area. And I had met him in just playing in a cover band at a bar band. And he was a sub drummer. And I remember he didn't even know the songs and kind of came up to me at the last minute and goes, dude, I didn't listen to any of the stuff. But I was like, I've seen you play. You're terrific. Follow me, watch me for the cues. And we just hit it off. And then he decided to put his own band together, which became The Flames. And he was handpicking who he wanted. And originally it was just, we were just going to do cool cover tunes that it didn't matter if we got work or if, we wanted to play Cheap Trick and Kiss and AC/DC and stuff. And he was going to play guitar, and he said, I've got a drummer. He thought of you on bass. And I was down with it immediately. And then we put that band together, and then he started writing songs, and they were good. They were killer. That's what you've heard. Yeah.
They were good. I mean,
we
legitimately.
We made 2 records with that band that never,
super
DIY, no budget. And we got really fortunate with that first record that there was a gentleman named Joe who has BuzzTown Studios, and I don't know if the studio still exists, but it was an old school analog 2-inch Studer. It was awesome. It was in a house in Wallingford, Connecticut. And he basically put together this production deal, and he handpicked, I want to say 5 Connecticut bands, his choose. So essentially he was the CEO or the A&R guy. And he said, the bands I pick can record at my studio. I'm going to make a compilation. And I believe the original idea was he was going to take the best stuff from each of these bands and then shop it and get the bands deals. And we kind of became his baby, and Matt took right to it and taught himself engineering. He basically taught himself guitar, and he talk about ambition and being driven. He was, and we were driving that band to we took it to the top of what we could do in that little city that really didn't have much of a music scene. It certainly didn't have record labels and things like that.
Yeah.
But
wow.
we were driven, and we ended up getting on the radio, the actual not just college radio, WCCC, which doesn't exist anymore, and it was a 50,000 watt, I believe you'd call it a superstation, that was one of the last 50,000 watt independent stations in the nation, if not the very last one. And it was where Howard Stern got his start.
Huh.
I've never seen his movie, but I'm pretty sure that Hartford and WCCC is depicted in the movie, because that's where he got his start, and he was given the creative freedom to do what he went on to do. And they played us in regular rotation, and it really helped us but what kind of caused the demise, or one of the reasons it didn't fully blossom, was we didn't have a record done when we were getting the airplay, when people wanted to buy it. We were getting calls from labels, but we didn't have the record done. It was a really weird time, and then Napster came. But it was still cool. It's still an exciting time, and a lot of people want us to do a reunion.
Well, it's cool
if you go
to YouTube and you Google or you put in Chad MacDonald and the Flames. I mean, that comes up pretty good. I mean, you can see some good stuff.
I'll have to revisit that stuff. I mean, again, that's a time machine.
Really, you don't go back and look at that?
I haven't. I've ended up getting tagged on a few things. Like whatever is it you just watched, I'll go back and watch it. Okay. Was that the Flames or was that Bullet Boys?
Oh, that was the Bullet Boys. Yeah, I thought you were talking about that. But yeah.
But the Flame stuff is really what we were also very fortunate, because we had a good friend of ours who he would drive us. I call him our archivist. Two of us even lived with him at one point when we were penniless. His name was Peter. And Pete, if you're watching this, thanks so much for everything you did.
Right on, Peter.
Because he really actually helped me end up getting out here, because at the time I didn't want to sign a lease and take on too much accountability. He's like, dude, just, you live in my spare room for a while till you're ready to make the move. And
good people.
So anyway,
meet good people.
Yeah, exactly. And he was a huge fan of us, and he probably still has, stuff we don't have, our demos and tons of photographs, our T-shirts, and just, we were, when you're in it and you're busy moving forward, I've never really been too nostalgic, so I don't save a lot of that stuff, but I'm glad when it does get saved. And and I'm glad that he was so fond of what we were doing. He would print up little laminate passes for when we'd go to New York City and play at CB's, like your T-shirt there, and he would drive us down there and make these laminates for us, and yeah, it was a really fun, exciting
well, let's
time.
talk about that. That's a good segue into that. I'm wearing this because I saw a picture or something about you guys that the Flames got invited by Joey Ramone
to
come and play there for a launching of some kind of website.
That is a super cool story that I'll recollect to the best of my recollection. Yes, and really the instrumental person in that, beyond Joey, was the late Arturo Vega, who, if you look close at their albums, a lot of people call him the Fifth Ramone. He was, I believe, a Mexican immigrant. He was one of the sweetest guys I ever met. He was their version of what this guy Peter was to us. He saw the jewel in their. He was at their very first rehearsal, and he spoke with a heavy Spanish accent. I'm sure you can find interviews with Arturo Vega. His friends called him Artie, he was an artist, visual artist. He designed their logo, the logo with the presidential seal. He made all their early T-shirts. He did their lighting. He would tour with them, and it's just a super important component. Um, he's even depicted in the song. Uh, well, in Chinese Rocks, which I think Dee Dee Ramone wrote. A lot of people think Johnny Thunders wrote that song, but I think Dee Dee probably wrote that song. And Arturo told me, he said that lyric, somebody calling on the phone said, hey, is Dee Dee home? My girlfriend's crying in the shower stall. That's what it is. He said that really happened, and that was at Arturo's loft, which he had, I believe, right up until he passed away. Anyway, the photo of the cover of the first Ramones album is right around the corner from his loft, and he ended up designing album covers for the New York Dolls and David Bowie, and he showed us a lot of these original artworks that he had in this giant drawer. It was so cool. But so this is in the late 90s. World Wide Web was just really starting to become what it is today, and people were starting to see the value in it, and bands were starting to make websites and so on. So he was the Ramones guy, and a lot of fans had made sites, but he made the official Ramones. I think that was the website, officialramones.com. And
I think that's cool that this is one of your bands that you watched as you were learning how to play bass, and then now here, and that's kind of been your life, and now here they are asking you guys to play. I mean, that must have been like, what?
Well, yeah, it was. I didn't. Okay, so it was in the days of America Online, dial-up, and I was renting a room from a friend, and I remember using her computer. Penny, if you're watching this, thanks for renting me a room and letting me use your computer, because that was
cool.
Super, also very important back in those days. And I want to say I got it might have even been spam, and it said something about the Ramones, so I clicked on it, and it said Ramones official website launch party, taking submissions from unsigned bands, something. I didn't even have the time to read it. I forwarded it to Matt. He read it. He tracked me down. I think I worked at a flower shop, and he called me and said, hey, I read that thing. It looks legit, but the deadline is tomorrow. We got to get into a studio and track a song right away. Do you know anybody? So boom, boom, boom. I called a friend of mine who had a studio in that town in Canton, in an old factory building. Boom, boom, boom. Back then there was no cell phone, so it was pay phones and everything. And we got the band together, and we went into this guy's studio, and we recorded, I think, one of our songs and Rock and Roll High School, if I recall. We chose that one, and we sent it in. We had to FedEx it. We couldn't even send the files like you could easily do that today. So we had to FedEx it and get it to New York City overnight, and we did. And within, I don't know, maybe a week later, Arturo sent us or Matt an email and said, hey, we picked you. I mean, there was like 2,000 bands that submitted. Hundreds of bands made submissions, and one of the bands was from Germany. So I remember that people came from all over the world to be there, and it was the Ramones website, official website launch party at CBGB's, and the surviving members of the Ramones were all invited to be there, and some of them were there. Joey was there, Tommy was there, Danny Fields, their first manager, was there. He was super cool, and that was our entree, if you will. And then Artie invited us back to hang out at his loft, and we were in awe. It was really cool. And then of course we were trying not to be fanboys, but once we realized we could ask him whatever we wanted to ask him, so we got a lot of the stories I mean, I wish if I go back in time, that's one of the things I'd do is go
Yeah.
back that night to hanging out there. But then Arturo kind of became our friend and would come to see us when we play at CB's, which we did quite often.
Played at
Usually
CB's, man. You played at CB's. I don't.
we would play CB's, but we would play like Tuesday nights at 7:30 p.m. for like 20 minutes. You get this 20-minute one, and we were doing showcasing. That's what it was called. And guys from labels would come, and there would be 20 people in there, and I don't know if it's still like that.
Well, CB's isn't there anymore, is it?
No, and now
What I
it's a
heard?
John Varvatos store.
And you're super young to be playing there. I mean, I have never heard of anybody that I know plays there, so maybe that's why I'm kind of.
Well, again, they had to keep the place open, and they did, I think, 7 nights a week. So a lot of people, like a lot of the band Live, remember the band Live?
Yeah.
They literally got their deal. Their story's super cool. They drove up from York, Pennsylvania to play audition night, which was, I think, a Monday night at 7 p.m. with their own music. They were in high school. And the dude just happened to be having a beer with his friend and saw a spark in these kids and went up and he says, "Hey, do you guys have management?" They're like, "What? We're from Pennsylvania. We got to get home and go to school in the morning."
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but the story is pretty much like he says, "Well, look, I really like you, your sound." And then he signed them, I believe, Radioactive Records, and he produced their first album, which is awesome. That first Mental Jewelry. Anyway, it was all because they had the ambition, and they packed in a van and drove up to CB's on a Monday night and played, and the right guy heard them and then refined them and got, But anyway, we kind of did our own little version of that. Never quite got the deal, but we did come close, and just trying it was super cool. It was a super exciting time. It was also a weird time because the feedback we were getting was that they liked us, they liked our songs, they liked our sound, they saw potential, but nobody was getting record deals unless they were the next Britney Spears or like a surefire hit. And we were, 3-piece rowdy, punky, pop punk kind of band, and those kind of bands were on hold at that time.
So when the
industry recovered,
when you were in there playing or just hanging out, did you ever just think, wow, the police were in here? This is where the police got discovered, or Blondie?
Yeah, of course we did. Well, I mean, we did have a job to do. And it just happened to be that we were there, and again, I think even then I was like I am today. I'm all about kind of being in the present. But one of the coolest things about CB's was going down the stairs into the bathrooms. As awful as they were, it was just, I'd heard so much about it, and the fact that they just never invested in improving the place. It did smell terrible. The little green room behind the stage was trashed. Debris was like falling out of the ceiling, the insulation, everything was filthy. The stage had stickers all over it. The speakers had dust in them, but it was New York. It was the Bowery. It was just amazing. It was amazing. And everybody, I think, would agree, and they had a super powerful sound system, and the friends that I did have in New Jersey and New York that would come on those nights, I still hear about it. They're like, "Man, those were special nights,"
And I wish I would have been there. I wish I would have seen it.
But our job was to do our best, and sometimes there was, 15 people out there, or we would bus in our own fans from Hartford. And again, a Tuesday night, it wasn't easy to get people to go down to New York to support you, but they did. Yeah. And we played our asses off, and we did the best that we could. And
man, I'd love to find some footage on that.
Check it around. Guy Peter he's the one who would have it.
Yeah.
And those are exciting times. That's a time machine moment.
Yeah.
If I did have the option, that would be one of the things I'd probably want to do. And I remember going in one after we got there in the afternoon, maybe 3 or 4 in the afternoon. I had to play at 7 or 8 p.m. And Hilly Crystal, the founder of CBGB's, who gave it its name, was like this cranky old guy, sitting working the door. And I'm like, I knew who he was from all the lore. And he's the one I want to say I bought the T-shirt off him. I bought a baby blue CB shirt at CB's, and I think I want to say I bought it off of him. And he's like, "Oh, I don't have enough change."
Well, at least it
So
came from there. I had to make my
yeah.
own.
Oh, you made it?
Yeah, I
Oh,
made it.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I had a rule that I wanted to get it at the spot, and then having
absolutely.
actually been able to play there was super exciting. And then
Fuck yeah.
same thing with Sun Studios. I have one of their T-shirts in Memphis, but I didn't want to get it at the mall. I wanted to get it at Sun Studios.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I did it. Next up is Stax. Next time I go to Memphis.
Good call. Good call. All right, so let's talk about. All right, so that era then transitioned into what? Like, when did you go out to?
Okay,
where did you go? Arizona? Or did you go to California first?
No, I went to Arizona. That band, we went through that CB's phase, and then we sort of decommissioned for a little while and decided if we were going to revamp. And then this guy Alex Grassi, who's still a good friend of mine, guitar player, was transitioning out of a band that actually did have a record deal. He had heard about us because we were on the radio, and I don't recall. I was at a real low point, and I went down to a friend of mine in North Carolina. I was considering selling all my gear, figuring out something else to do with my life because, we were down and out. Times were hard, no money, no gigs.
How could it get better than CBGB's, man? Oh my God.
And I remember Matt calling me because I had said, dude, I don't think I can do this anymore. And I didn't know if I was going to go back to school or become a monk or whatever the next thing was. And I went down to North Carolina, and this is another good memory because I was going to stay a few days. I must have stayed 2 weeks, and I did get recharged. And Matt called me and said, dude, I wrote a bunch of new songs. I met this kid. He's incredible. He looks super cool. He plays guitar. He's got his own studio. That was Alex. And he said, Matt wrote these 3 or 4 new songs. He says, you got to get home so you can play bass on these demos. And it really gave me something to look forward to.
Nice.
I hadn't even heard the songs. And I came back and the songs were killer, and I tracked the bass on. I'd love to hear those demos because they were really good. And Matt played the drums. He did a Dave Grohl. He did everything on it. He could have even done the bass, but he sort of lured me back in by saying, I need you to play on these things. And it worked because the songs were killer. And then this guy, Alex Grassi, ended up saying, hey, I want to join what you guys have and make it better. And he did. And so we all moved in together, and we had a basement in the studio. We had a studio in the basement, and we kind of did Mach 2 of the Flames, and we revamped the sound and made it, we made a full length album. Well, I think it may have been 7 or 8 songs. So kind of a glorified EP that we did in Washington, D.C. with its producer, Jim Ebert, who had worked with Alex's previous band. And Jim Ebert had a couple big hits. He worked with Meredith, what was her name? Meredith Brooks. I'm a bitch, I'm a lover. He had done that song.
Huh.
So he had a lot of cred. And he came up and listened to what we were doing, and he did the classic producer thing and kind of, we're going to scrap that song. We're going to rearrange this one. We're going to change the chorus on this one. And it was awesome. And what we did is we played local gigs to pool our money to afford to finance that project. And we stayed with Alex's aunt, I want to say, right in Washington, D.C., so that we could go down there, and we spent an entire week, full days, working on that album. And we did it. We did 1 song a day, and it was really cool. It was focused, and Alex really brought, it was an exciting time, and we did it. We had the money. We stayed on budget. We finished the project. That album never got released. It was going to be called Smashed, The Flames Smashed. We'll dig it up. You'd really like it, and it was some of that punkier edge from the first lineup of the Flames but with Alex and the new degree of the songwriting and it was kind of like when Andy Summers came into the Police, their first guitarist. They were basically cashing in on that punk movement in London.
Uh-huh.
And Henry, the original guitar, a lot of people don't know about that, but Henry was a punk guitarist who could play 3 chords. And then they got Andy Summers, and it escalated. Sting's songwriting could now really go anywhere, that it was limitless. And that's what Alex was to us. And he did. And we some people are fond of that original sound.
Yeah.
And then other people, it's kind of like Deep Purple. They had the different lineups, the different singers, and I think it's Van Halen's a good example. They had the 2 different singers, and so
Metallica.
Yeah, I like them both. And both of those eras have their valid points, and we made one full-length album with each. And I don't even have copies of them, to be honest, but they're out there. And Peter would be a good one. We'll dig that up, and maybe
I hope that comes up. I hope
we'll
this kind of
that stuff.
Yeah, I hope this can kind of spur that up.
And again, if MySpace was still a thing, occasionally I would used to put up tracks that I played on, but MySpace isn't a thing anymore. And but maybe we can get that stuff uploaded to YouTube or whatever, because it's good, and it deserves to be heard, and a lot of it would hold up today. And sometimes so much time goes by that things come back around into relevance. And I'm just a song guy. If it's a good song, it'll hold up for me, forever. Production is just a bonus, but we did have good songs, and that's something I was always and still am really proud of. In fact, every group I ever worked with, I've been fortunate just to play good songs, and if I can make the songs a little bit better with what I bring to it as a bass player, that's my job.
I think you do, not just with your bass playing. I mean, with your personality, the person that you are. I really do. And I got a personal account about that. I was with you guys with an incident. So
sure, we'll get to there. And I'll transition this era of the Flames. Alex gave it a year. At the end of that year, same thing. We had started showcasing again. He exploited all of his contacts, and that was when Napster was in full swing, and it was really tough to get a record deal and break through. And he got an offer in Los Angeles or in Southern California, and he took the offer, and he was the linchpin at that time of what we were doing. And he said, guys, I'm going to be relocating really soon. And so we did one final show in New York. And then I want to say we drove out. Alex got in a cab and went to the airport, and that was it. And it wasn't like I was never going to see him again, but I knew that band was finished that night. But then he went out there and stayed in contact with everybody and ended up bringing a lot of opportunities to both me and Matt, his former bandmates. And then Matt followed suit and moved to LA. I was like the kid that couldn't quite make the, I used that song by Three Dog Night. I headed for Las Vegas. I only made it out to Needles. I did want to make it out to the West Coast, and I ended up in Phoenix.
It may not be a bad thing, man. It may not be.
It wasn't a bad thing. It was a good thing, but it did on paper it would look like that, and so I ended up out here, and much larger city, much bigger music scene, more opportunities in every regard, and started making inroads in the local scene.
So is that how, by not burning bridges with people that you play with, you start getting contacts? Is that maybe how Kevin Dubrow got a hold of you?
Well, Kevin, so that was my first national artist that I had played with, and it was directly related to Alex. Alex got out to Los Angeles, and being the focused and ambitious and talented and very highly intelligent, able to accomplish things guy that he was.
He could find the scenes.
Yeah. And so he got out there and started making inroads, and then he called me in Phoenix and said, hey, I want to I met Kevin. He had left Quiet Riot at that point, and he wanted to do a solo tour. Um, and he needed a band, and he basically made Alex his music director. So Alex asked Matt to play drums, and uh, and me to play bass, and we did. I think it was maybe just a 2-week tour, um, but that was my entree into being in a touring, national act. And Kevin was amazing. And I remember when we first, we were all guys. We actually had our vinyl of Metal Health.
Oh shit! I still got the picture vinyl of it.
We had Kevin sign it, and we had to be fanboys for a little bit.
Yeah.
But he got right down to business. So we learned all the music on our own. We got together and we rehearsed without him until we knew we had it, and then he came in. We had it. We got on a plane and we went out and did a tour. That's how we did it, and that's how I realized quickly that's how it's done. And so Alex was. I do owe him a forever debt of gratitude for thinking of me and giving me that opportunity, because that opportunity is what led to all the other stuff. And it just kind of rolled from there. But that was exciting. And I remember, I'll tell this quick little anecdote. We got into the rehearsal studio in LA at Mates, or one of those places. Alex might remember where it was, but one of those hourly rehearsal studios. And I think we did the first night with just us. And then Kevin came in the next night. And he had this little zipper shoulder case, and he unzips it, and it's a foldable mic stand, and it was the black and white, from the video. And he's setting it up, and he's got his wireless mic in his in-ears, and so we're like, as soon as we saw the striped mic
Was
stand,
that thing taped? Was it taped or painted?
I think it was tape, and it was really light because he would fly with it. So everywhere he went, he had his thing. And
you just can't find a cool mic stand like that, by the way. I've looked. You can't find those kind of cool.
Right. I think he had a custom made. It might have even been PVC. Alex can answer that. But
wow.
But then he got his in-ears all dialed up, and then the first song we did was Mental Health, and we had a PA in there and everything, and Matt did the drum roll, and then as soon as this dude came in with that scream, because he did it full on, even though it was just us in the room, there was no people hanging around, and we all just gave each other the little look of like, wow, it was, nobody had that voice and that scream, and it was exciting. And then we ran through the material. He gave a thumbs up, and we got on our plane and went and did it. And it was super cool.
Yeah, again, because you watch this guy on MTV. I mean, they were bigger than life when they came out. Just like, oh my God. Like,
yeah, they were, and I did have that album. I might have had the second album, so I actually knew some of the songs. There was some really good stuff from his later days that didn't, that wasn't a hit. I remember one song, we only played it the first few songs, and then he scratched it from the list. And I remember not wanting to, rock the boat too hard, but I liked the song so much. It was called "I Don't Know What I Want," and it's from the Mental Health era reunion in the late 90s, maybe a record from like the 1999, I want to say. And I don't know if it ever got any airplay or whatever, but the song kicks ass. It's like The Who. And it's called "I Don't Know What I Want," so look that up. And I remember learning all the material. I learned it by the pool at my apartment. And when that came on, I was, it was exciting to play the hits too, but that one came on, I'd never heard it, and I'm like, what's this? And we did play it, and I think Kevin just said, oh, nobody knows that, we're not going to do that one. Yeah, he goes, we'll just stick to the hits. A lot of guys are like that, but I was like, oh man, really? I really like that song.
Yeah.
And with Jani Lane, when I played with him after Kevin, which was also another Alex invite.
Okay.
Same thing. Jani said, hey, he had left Warrant, and he had asked Alex, same thing, can you put a band together for me? And we'll go do some shows. And he did. And I got asked to do that too. And then Alex moved on to play, I want to say with Kevin, in a reformed Quiet Riot. And so Jani was down a guitar player, but I stayed, and we got another guitarist, which was Dario, who was Dario Lorena, who's in Black Label Society, and now he's a man. And at that time, he was a very young man. I think he was 15, maybe 14.
Did you guys play here? I know Jani Lane had a club here in Orlando.
We did. We didn't play at his club, but we definitely played. I want to say Janice Landing. Is that in Orlando? Janice Landing. I know because there's really good photos from a gig we did in Janice Landing.
I think it's
maybe Tampa. That's Tampa.
Yeah, that's Tampa.
No, I don't know if it's still there, but it was kind of a indoor, outdoor, really cool place. I remember it being really cool.
Yeah, because his was Jani Lane's here in Orlando.
Yeah, he had a club in Orlando that did well, but by the time I played with him, I think he had sold that club. He wasn't running that club anymore, and he had then moved back to. He was kind of splitting his time between Los Angeles and Ohio, where he's from. He was a Cleveland boy.
Okay.
And
I love Cleveland.
Yeah, I do too. Anyway, and he had left Warrant and made a solo album, which is really good, and then put a band together to go basically promote that. And that's where I came in, and I played with him for about 3 years. And Jani wrote all the Warrant songs, so we could play an hour of basically Warrant hits, and then a few of his solo songs, which were terrific. But same thing. Sometimes I had to kind of get on him and be like, "No, let's put that in set tonight. It's really good. People like it." And he'd be like, "No, let's just do the Warrant hits." I'd be like, "No, man." And he would let me. I could fight for it.
Oh yeah.
And I'd get it in the set because I'm proud of that because his songs were really good, and even the ones that nobody had heard. And then there was always, it's kind of like with Bullet Boys, there was always somebody at the shows that knew the later day stuff and that was really into it, and that made it worth that. That would really lift you up when they'd be like, "Man, I love that song," or like the way you like the bass parts on that stuff that I did or whatever. It means a lot. And of course it's fun to play big hit songs that everybody knows. Nothing like it, but there's also something to be said of just getting behind something that means something to you, whether anybody knows it or not. And I've always been like that, and I hopefully always will be. So
yeah, and playing songs that you really know, like I'm sure you got to know Smooth Up In You real good. That feeling of, okay, here we go. This song, I know that I can play this song with my eyes closed and behind my back.
Well, let's transition from the Jani thing.
Jani, and then it was
the way I ended up with playing with Bullet Boys was, again, all of this is kind of just serendipity and who and just being a lot of it when you're going to be in a touring act, you got to be good enough on your instrument, but you got to be somebody that the other guys can stand to be around for the other 23 hours of the day.
Absolutely.
You could play like Beethoven, but if nobody wants to be around you, you're probably not going to last too long in the business because
or find any other work.
And so when I was in LA at the NAMM show, probably 2000, it would have been, I guess, early 2010, because it's always in January.
That's about right.
And I had met Marq, the singer from Bullet Boys, at NAMM, just randomly, or somebody might have introduced me to him. And he knew me from playing with Jani and said, "Hey, I think I'm going to need a new bass player soon." The guy who was my predecessor was going to be taking care of an ailing family member. and was going to be leaving LA and moving out of state to do that. And I said, sure, I'd love to, I'd love to play with you. I love the, at that time, I didn't have full knowledge of the Bullet catalog, but what I knew I liked a lot. And I thought Marq was a killer singer and frontman.
Yeah.
And, but I also didn't take it that seriously because I had learned, hey, if the phone rings and I'm giving an actual concrete date, well, then I'll sit down. I didn't go home and learn all the material, let's put it that way. And then maybe a month later, he said, hey, there's been a change and my guy's going to be able to stay on board through the summer. I'm paraphrasing because it's literally 10 years ago. And then I said, okay, great. And, so I didn't woodshed all the songs. But then, man, like 4 days before that tour, I think this person's family member took a turn for the worst. I got a call, can you do it? And it was so last minute. And I said, physically, time-wise, I can do it. The only song I know is Smooth Opinion. And they're like, don't worry about it. You can learn it on the road, and I literally was learning that stuff with a set of headphones and a little Tascam player that you could play along to. And a CD. I was learning all that stuff in the back of a bus. They picked me up in Arizona, driving to their first gig in Wisconsin, and I just looped those 10 songs over and over, quite literally to the moment I walked on stage and played my first show. No rehearsal, and I learned all of it that way, and then I was in the band for 10 years.
I think that is what I most admire about you as a bass player. You came out, okay, so how does Gene Loves Jezebel fit into that?
Okay, that's a really good question. Okay, so I was playing with Jezebel probably around that time. Yes, I was probably actively playing with Jezebel when I met Marq at NAMM, but Jezebel didn't work that much.
No.
A little bit here and there, a little flyouts, little like 80s package things. And so for a long time, I was doing both, and they weren't conflicting. I fell into that because I had a friend, I still have a friend, Michael Brahm, who is one of my favorite drummers I ever played with and favorite people. And he was the drummer in A Flock of Seagulls at that time. And he was for a good decade. And I met him here in Arizona. He lived in LA for years and years. And that's how he had been in Gene Loves Jezebel when he lived in LA and did touring with them and made several records with them. And then he moved back here to Arizona, which is where I met him. And we would play club gigs together. And then one time, Michael, the singer from Gene Loves Jezebel, must have asked him, hey, I need a bass player quick. Do you know anybody? He referred me. Same thing. I learned all the material on an airplane, I think literally. And I played a gig. I remember the first gig that I played with them, no rehearsal. I don't even know if I had even met the other guys. And
I mean, that feeling of going on stage and not really knowing the material.
It was pretty exhilarating. And then, I mean, but it's not rocket science. It's rock and roll, and good songs kind of play themselves once you get the nuts and bolts together. And yeah, and he liked the way I played, and then I had the mobility and the flexibility, and so I ended up being in that band
so let me give you
and I still am, in the sense that things come back. If gigs come back to life, then and the music's killer. The Jezebel material.
Oh my God!
Especially on bass, it's really good on bass. It's a lot of fun.
My story on that, on when I met you, like I used to listen to this album, Kiss of Life. This was like in '90, I guess.
Yeah,
and
89, 90, yeah.
And I don't know what it is about this album. It's kind of dark but melodic, and just like every freaking song is so good. I couldn't take it out of the CD player. So my band, when we got to play at the festival, and they said, we were just like an underground cover band, and we started to gain traction, and we were just really nice and eager to do anything. And when Richard asked us to play, like we were doing all these parking lot deals just to promote the whole festival, and they were like, "Oh, Gene loves
80s in the
Jezebel."
park, right?
80s in the park.
Okay.
And they were like, "Oh, I think we were playing the next day, but we were out to meet and greet and just get a feel for what was going on." And you guys, Gene Loves Jezebel was coming on under this overhang.
It was in like an awning or like a open air.
Yeah,
it was a half open air. It did have a cover.
It wasn't a warehouse, but it's kind of like it
was a unique. Yeah, it was a unique place.
But it had a stage and neon light.
Mm-hmm.
No, incandescent light.
Didn't they call it the 80s prom? Like
the 80s prom.
They had the other. They had the outdoor main stages, and then there was this after hours thing that we were the music for that after hours gathering, which they dubbed the 80s prom.
That's right.
And that's where we played, and that's where I met you.
Yeah. And I was like, you know what? I gotta, cause man, this, I gotta see these guys, and dude, your stage presence made me like, holy fuck, this is a badass live band. I mean, you had this you made it look really underground and cool. That's the best way I can say it. You had a cool hat and the fucking pointy boots and like didn't give a fuck. I'm here to fucking rock. And my buddy from the Air Force happened to be with us. He came in. I hadn't seen him in like 30 years. And he was like, damn it, I'm going to come down there. I'm going to be your bodyguard. So cool. He was acting like my bodyguard the whole time. And I was like, I said, Butch, I want to go over there and I want to say hi to this guy, man. I want to steal the look that this guy has. And as soon as like I walked up to you, no sooner did I say, hey, man, and you turned to my friend and went, your name is Butch.
Yep,
your name is Butch. And we were just like, what?
You guys were, I remember you both having a good time that night. And it blew your minds, the look on your faces, because I knew who Butch was. And he probably at that point recognized who I was, but not prior. He didn't recognize me on the stage.
No.
With the performing. It wasn't until I came right up and said, the look of surprise and shock from him was amazing. And then you were amazed that he knew who I was.
Oh, I was happy because I was like, I'm going to be friends with this guy.
Yeah, I remember that moment. And that was amazing. It was. And it was a fun night, too. The vibe was, that whole day was killer. That the festival, that was the first one that I did. And it was killer because they really had invested a lot to make that.
Yeah. And it was the first one that they were trying to throw out, and they were going to try to do more. And it was starting to catch on. And you guys came back 3 or 4 more times.
Yeah, I think we did.
And then,
but the first one for me was my favorite. It really was.
Yeah, it was a lot of energy. A lot of energy right up in there. A lot of people, just loving it. And Michael put on a real good show. Everybody was up close and personal. And then they had 2 more, and the last one was like a rain out, mud fest. And so they changed it. They decided to go somewhere where the rain wasn't going to be that much of a factor. And it kind of took the whole feel away from the whole festival. And you were now in Bullet Boys, but you were sidelining.
Oh, okay. Now I know where you're going with this. Yes. I was moonlighting with Jezebel.
And you were still kind of like, hey, don't say anything.
I had to hire you to be my chauffeur so that I could do both gigs.
Yeah.
I want to say in the same night, right? On 2 different parts of the state.
It was the same night. You stayed behind. The Bullet Boy, you guys played the night before out under this rinky-dink little. They gave you They gave you a canvas, and
then the next night in Tampa,
the next
and
day,
yet I had to play still at the 80s festival with Jezebel,
so you
and then
stayed.
shoot across. I stayed. I don't think I told the guys in the band.
You
I
were
just said,
cutting
I'll
it.
see you at the, yeah, I was really cutting it. And
You were
I probably
cutting
should
it
have had a
tight, man.
helicopter. I should have had a helicopter, but I was
Yeah.
so determined to pull it off. And I was like, how am I going to do this? And, you know, if I rent a car, I'm going to have to bring it back. And
Yeah.
I was going to go play with Bullet and then just carry on. And so I thought of you, and
Yeah.
you hopped right up and said, dude, I'll be waiting at the side of the stage. And literally, I think you were. I stepped off, got in the car. We drove clear across the whole state, right?
Go
It was
across the whole state. I had no
directly a
idea.
straight line.
I could get to Tampa, but I had no idea other than that. It was just like,
We went Melbourne to Tampa, and then I went on stage with the second band, and I was on time because
I
of
was like,
you.
I got
I pulled
2
it off.
hours. I was going to fucking, but I got 2 hours to pick this guy's brain. And I pretty much did. Found out how great a guy you are. And we pulled into a hotel. You put me up in my own room, and then I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna meet the Bullet Boys. I'm gonna meet Marq, Torin, and holy fuck. And we went around. We all kind of careened into their room, and what a great bunch of guys, man. I mean, Marq,
we were killing that night too.
Marq,
I remember we were loud. We were always loud, but we played our ass.
And let me give you my take, man, because I never got to give you this. So we pack the minivan and we go to a very non-disclosed place. It was a little rough, and there's a band in there playing before you guys. Like, we go in, you guys go behind stage. You guys made me feel real welcome, out front, and help sell T-shirts or whatever, and just kind of mingle around. And you go backstage, and you guys even let me come back there and look around. And the band out front, a local band, was just, they were fucking killing it. So whoever that was, I don't know if they see this, man. And I was like, wow, I would hate to go on after that. They were good. And then I come backstage and I'm looking at you guys, and I swear to God, my take on it was like, you guys were professional, prize fighting son of a bitches, man. That just, you were focused on your craft, all of you. And then when it came down to, you were plugging into somebody else's stuff. Like, it wasn't even your stuff. You're just,
we didn't even sound check. Yeah.
You're like, here we go, going out there.
That was normal back then. That was routine.
Dude, it was like, I was watching an art, like a craft, and you came out and you destroyed them. And I had no idea that Marq Torin was that good of a guitarist, man.
And songwriter. Yeah.
And songwriter, singer,
He's
all that.
Quadruple threat.
And just a sweet guy. A super sweet guy about the whole rock and roll, and the whole, loves it, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I have you to thank that I made that gig, and no one was none the wiser, and I pulled it off. So I chose wisely, having you as my man, and it was a memorable time. And I don't advise that kind of Phil Collins. I call it my Phil Collins at Live Aid moment. You get that? Your connection is unstable. I don't know if that means anything. This isn't my computer, but it said your connection is unstable. But I hear you fine.
Okay.
I think we're good.
So, am I allowed to discuss what happened that night?
Sure, if you want. Yeah.
I mean, I'll keep it vague, but I was taking video, and there were some new songs that you guys did, and I think one was called, was it Symphony? But the one where he wrote about his not.
Yeah, that probably was it. That was probably one of them.
He went through a bad breakup. And he told the whole crowd, he was sitting there telling them, he's like, listen, I was afraid to come back to Florida, man, because, I had a really bad breakup with a wife, and he had kids. She won't let him see him. He told the whole story right there.
You're right. That's right. He did tell that whole story.
Dude, I got to tell this because I stuck up. Okay, so, the show was great. that song was great. I've got it on video. You can find it on YouTube. It was in Tampa, Bullet Boys in Tampa. I forget the place. But after near the end of the show, all these policemen started showing up, and nobody had any inkling of why. And as soon as the show was done, they came in and they got Marq and they took him out and they handcuffed him and right out to the car, and gone they were. And dude,
quick. It was so quick. I barely noticed it myself because I was changing and doing
you were
the
changing.
post show, and all of a sudden that happened, and it was the police were very efficient and very quick.
Yeah, there was
and
a
they were
lot
professional that they waited until the show was over.
Yes,
yeah,
thank
it
you.
Was.
But you took
and they
over,
were all,
man. You took over like a banshee. Like you have a built-in leadership thing about you, and I think that's what people see. Because you were like, all right, Steve, you're going to do this. You're going to take this there. You're going to get this. I'm going to get this. I got to go to the police department. I got to find out what's going on. You had a whole tour that I think got put on hold because of that.
I think we missed at least one show, if I recall. I haven't thought about that incident in a while, but
yeah,
it was his worst fears with the ex, and
it was crazy.
I didn't get, then as now I don't get too involved in people's personal affairs, but it was his fear of why we didn't want to go to Florida. It had been supposedly had been cleared up, apparently wasn't, and didn't get sorted out until we had missed the next show, which I want to say was in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I think it was Jacksonville. It makes sense.
And
I remember that was
could have been worse though.
That was the first time I saw how people that don't know what's going on or what happened or what's happening in anybody's life can just say mean stuff on Twitter. What I took, and I swear to God, I got on there and I actually defended Marq because I was like, hey, listen, I was there. I know what happened, man. That's one of the sweetest guys I've ever met. And he even gave to the crowd why, he can't see his kids. And
I forgot the element of it that he had told that whole, soliloquy before he played that song. And interesting that you remember that very detail.
That was a big thing for me, man.
But the one thing I will say, at least we had a kick-ass show because we did play our asses off.
Kick-ass show.
We were on fire. I remember being on fire that night, like all of us, and probably because of the excitement of me having to physically get there and kind of keep. It was a little clandestine about moonlighting. It was a whirlwind, and so the fact that we did get there and we got there in time, that excitement I think channeled into the playing, and then and once it goes down the runway, once you take flight, it's on, and that's where I like to be. That's where I like to live. And
so go to YouTube, check out the Bullet Boys in Tampa. I think what was that like? Was that in 14 or 15? 2000?
I would say 15, maybe 16 at the latest.
I think so because I remember coming
15
back.
or 16 because we would have had the Elefante record if we were playing symphony,
right.
And that's 15. So it's probably 15 or 16.
Just go to YouTube, check out the Bullet Boys in Tampa around 2015, and look at the energy of that show. It was amazing.
I wouldn't mind watching that too. I don't think I ever did, but
I'll send it to you.
I do remember feeling that at least we had a incendiary performance.
Yeah.
Before it ended the way that it did, but we did finish the show and had no idea that was going to happen. So things happen,
That was actually a pretty cool way to end if you think about it. In the rock and roll aspect of things,
it's memorable and like it's sort of like people say that about certain musicians. Like let's say C.C. DeVille. There's some people that might say, "Oh man, that guy's a hack." Or it's like, man, his parts are memorable. And that's what's important. And so that night was memorable.
Yeah.
It may not have been the most savory outcome, but it was memorable. And
Yeah,
here we are 5 years later talking about it. So
you got a little more than your money's worth for that. If you
it was
if you paid
memorable
the
even
ticket.
before that incident. Just getting there was memorable. So
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, you're on to some new, bigger, and better things now. Did I meant to ask you this? How is it when a band like that, decides to? Okay, there was a big movement going on a year ago. A lot of '80s bands were thinking that there was a couple big ones that had a big arena tour lined up and selling out
stadium tour.
stadiums. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're selling out. And it looked like a lot of other 80s bands were thinking they could maybe get in on this too, and we're reuniting.
The time was the right time for a lot of them to do that. Yeah, exactly. No one saw, what was coming, but go ahead. No.
So I got my drummer is on to everything. He knows he's really IT sensitive, and he hit me up. He's like, "Hey man, did you see this?" And then I was like, "Whoa, okay, I don't know. I don't even know if Chad knows this. So did I give you the information that was maybe happening?"
No. I'm a pretty solitary, private type person, so I'm not the type that shares, what I
Gotcha.
had for lunch on. I'm not a social media guy, barely at all, and that was I think it was the right move to put the original band back together. Again, if anyone had had a crystal ball of the whole planet shutting down after, I think they only did 2 to 3 shows before that was it, for everybody. And so the momentum and it was a strange, it still is a strange time to release new music, or you can't really promote anything because no one knows. You might be able to play locally, but getting on airplanes and launching, multi-date tour, there's very few people doing it. And I think obviously that's why they postponed the stadium tour for a whole year. And so, yeah, I actually thought that them putting the original band together, the timing I thought was very good, and it was the right time to do it. Motley had just announced that they were doing it, and
yeah,
I'll bet others were about to do the same thing when the virus came and changed things.
Well, cool. I guess I was just I was hoping you weren't the rug wasn't pulled out from under you. You're like, oh shoot, kind of thing.
No, I mean, if it wasn't for those guys starting that band, I never would have been in that band. And when you if you're like me, I mean, I'm a player, I'm a bass player, but I'm also a fan. I'm an admirer of music, and there's just nothing like an original, the OGs we call it. Me and my friends, and it's like there's nothing quite like the OGs even. And so whenever I see somebody with a Ramones T-shirt, I always zone in on the names, and if it's the actual original 4 guys, I'm like. So
gotcha.
Same thing with this band, and the only thing I'm bummed about really is that I didn't get to see them.
Yeah,
because they only did the 2 shows, and then everything shut down. So if things resume, I'll definitely see him, whether it's here in Phoenix or. I don't think anyone really has any idea. Even that stadium tour, maybe that's not even going to happen. I mean, who knows? No one knows anything yet.
I know, it's the weirdest.
I sure hope
right
it does. Now. But for concert promoters and the stage lighting companies and the trucking companies, and no one just knows anything. And so my heart goes out to everybody in the industry, not just the musicians. But there's a whole lot that goes on particularly with touring, because there's guys that make their living as the dude that's the sound man and the light man and the tour manager and people you don't even see, um, and the people that sell them that go on tour and sell the merchandise for bands. I mean, everybody's on hold, everybody's out of work. So
That's a crazy,
um, not
crazy,
just
crazy
the
time.
performers. Performers are probably, Motley Crue's going to be all right whether they tour or they don't tour. But
Yeah, sure.
the dudes that drive the trucks, not so much.
All right. Well,
That's how I
guys,
look at
well,
that.
let's talk about some of your future endeavors, man. You're on to something really cool right now. Um, you're playing in an STP tribute band. That's not just an STP tribute band. They're on a level that looks like it's really, really legit and fun.
Well, yeah. Thanks. Thanks for saying that.
I mean, you're portraying
Considering
one of
we
my
could,
favorite basses. I would have a ball with that for sure. So what's
it,
the deal?
well, I got asked before the shutdown if I'd be interested in a project, uh, an STP tribute. And I thought about it and I said, well, man, that's like one of my favorite bass players. I was at the right age for pretty much all their records with Scott. Um, Loved the songs, seen him live, and always admired Robert, his playing, his look, his style. He's one of the main songwriters, the whole thing. But I was also a little bit intimidated because he's so good. And I knew that if I was going to say yes, I would have to dig in and learn his parts. So I did say yes. And we had got together maybe just a handful of times before everything shut down. So the project just kind of went on hold. And we decided to resurrect it not long ago because we had the opportunity to do the single show that you saw it, which was a live stream, so there's no audience. That will probably get edited into a proper hour-long video
Mm-hmm.
happening, as we speak, I think. And so it gave a target of something to shoot for.
Good.
And it wasn't a tour, it wasn't even a live gig, but it was, hey, this is going to happen, do you guys want to be part of it? We said yes. And then we crammed it together. And I my hair's grown out a little from
You know
at the
what?
the beginning of the year. It was short. I was going to do the Robert DeLeo thing, and I
I
got
see
the
where you're going.
Gilligan hat. I got the Gilligan hat because early on that was one of the looks that he had. So I said, I'll just wear a Gilligan hat and get the aviator shades. And I did that at the very last minute. I got the Gilligan hat and the shades, and I already had the gangster shoes, the black and white. And so the only thing I had to pay money to do that was the hat,
Yeah.
the $10 hat. And then learning the parts was it was a joy. It still is. I mean, to
I
dig
love
into
it.
that stuff and really wanting to play it accurate. And I was fortunate because the channel's not up anymore, but there was a channel on YouTube that I stumbled on, and I'm devastated it's not up there anymore. And it was a guy who had all the original tracks of, I mean, everything, not just STP. And one of the things that he did, he was obviously a studio geek. No one knows how he got these tracks. I mean, he must have been in the industry. I saw a Q&A, and he just said, everything that I have is accessible to anybody else. He just somehow knew how to get it. But anyway, when it came to the STP songs, he had isolated tracks. And so one of the coolest things that he did was I would listen to I'd listen to the song as you know it. Then I'd listen to Robert's isolated bass track, the actual track. Then he had these versions of all the radio hits, of which they have so many. And it was like he custom made these mixes for me because it was the original tracks minus bass. So I could mix myself in and play along with the actual recording and get the feel and the groove and the tempos. And it was a lot of work, but it was also a lot of fun. And I have that guy to thank for, the old days you put the needle on the record and learn it. What was that note? And you have to get up and do it again and then put it on tape, all night long with the headphones.
Yeah.
This is a much easier procedure. And I found myself playing along with Eric Kratz, the drummer, like the guy, and I was like, oh, those are his isolated drums. I'm going to play along with that. And so that's how I crammed all that stuff on those songs. And I think we did 12, maybe 12, 13 songs. And it came together pretty well. And, that was, we're going to use that footage to probably make like a press kit to go play,
Sweet
some
man.
gigs, some casinos and so on. And honestly, they're just they were an incredible band. They had a lot of
oh yeah, and I mean
a lot of great songs.
As far as having fun, I mean that's gonna be a blast.
It's a blast, dude. It's a blast because the energy is there, the grooves are there, the songs are killer. Having a front man with a bullhorn running around shirtless.
Oh yeah.
It makes you, step it up. And that was the thing. I'm like, I got to step it up on multiple levels here because Robert is a mofo on the bass and I got to play like him. And the guys in the band are, the dude doing the
I loved watching him, man. I loved that. God, I just love that thing, man.
We were at a rehearsal and I was in my street clothes like I am, just dressed like this. I was playing the parts and I was, concerned with that. And Howie, the singer of that project, was doing it full tilt with a bullhorn, rolling around shirtless on the floor in this rehearsal. There's nobody there. And that's when I said, oh, I really got to step this up. I've got
hell yeah.
And that's when I started getting screenshots of Robert. And luckily I was fortunate. I already had that Schecter bass, which is the model bass that he plays, and it certainly did play in their heyday. And so it became fun to mimic it. The thing is too, I was telling the guys in that group, I said, those moves come naturally for the parts. It really almost happened subconsciously. It makes you want to do that, like his whole cool, almost upright bass thing, and it's like a cocky, confident, but not arrogant. And he straddles that line really well. And boy, is that guy a terrific musician. I mean, just and so I dug into interviews and obviously photographs, and I feel like I'm just getting started with that because we had to kind of cram to meet that deadline and get that footage shot. And there's a lot of things that I would look forward to improving on.
Speaking of which, I didn't mean to cut you off, man, but I want to touch on something before we end.
Okay.
The hot tub time machine.
Yeah, we missed that one.
Talking about getting apart. I mean, I'm starting to see a cycle here, man. Maybe, maybe you're a systematic bass player. Maybe you'll go into Velvet Revolver's bass player next.
Cinema.
Yeah.
Hey, the Hot Tub Time Machine, for those that may not know, was a film in 2010?
10.
Yeah, probably 2010.
2010.
I call that film a confluence of Porky's, Back to the Future, and The Hangover. If you rolled all three of those, you got the buddy movie, hangover, out of time aspect, the time travel aspect of Back to the Future, and the sort of TNA lowbrow humor of Porky. And you roll them all together and you got Hot Tub Time Machine.
It's hilarious.
And
hilarious.
I was working with these guys at a Poison tribute at that time. And the story.
Oh, you were really working with a Poison tribute?
Yes. And to my understanding, the way we ended up doing the film was that it was MGM. They were shooting in Vancouver, which is where they do a lot of, even American film companies shoot in Canada. And That's where this was being done. And once we got there, and I started asking around the people on the set, because I'm like, how do they find us in Arizona? And with MGM's budget, you think it was a thrill to be there, but I wanted to know how we ended up being chosen to do it. And they had said, well, we tried some actors. There's plenty of actors, but they weren't convincing as in the part of Poison. And then they tried some local musicians, but they weren't convincing because they weren't campy enough to be Poison. And they were running out of ideas. So somebody said, well, let's see if there's a tribute. And they found us, and we got a call, and we were off on a plane to Vancouver for a few days. It was a real thrill. But the whole time we did that, none of us really thought the movie we thought it was gonna be like straight to DVD or never quite come out. And for some reason, with the name, I thought it was so silly that I'm like, this is a working title. They're going to change the title.
Yeah, I get that.
And they never did. And it came out, and it was actually a success. And it's it's a pretty hilarious piece of work.
I was so proud to see you guys, and I think even you sent me a little blip of, I guess it was you that was doing the videotaping, and I didn't catch that.
No, it was another guy named Chad that put that together. I'm glad he did too, because that's a real nice time capsule.
Dude, it was almost as funny as the movie. I mean, it kind of looked like the same characters in a way.
Yeah. Well, again, and I will say, when we did get there, and if you look that up on YouTube, the making of Unskinny Bob Hot Tub Time Machine, I think is all you'll have to type in. It's probably a little 10-minute, I call it a mini documentary. And when we were there, we were going to do the shooting overnight. It was in the mountains outside Vancouver, and it didn't even get dark till like maybe 11 p.m., dark enough to shoot. So we had all afternoon to prepare and establish what we were going to shoot, so that we'd all be ready when we did shoot. And I remember thinking, there's going to probably be a choreographer, and the director's we're going to do all these different things, and they're going to tape things. And he said, why don't you guys do what you do and let me check it out, and then we'll refine it and figure out what we need for the scene. And we did what we did. We played the song, and he was just all smiles and said, great. He didn't tell us a thing. We just did. There were certain times we had to be quiet. In fact, the scenes where we're performing they dubbed the audio in afterwards, and we had to be totally quiet and jump along. And there was 300 extras out there with fake beer and 80s ski garb and everything. It was exciting, and they're jumping up and down, and there's no sound because they were recording the dialogue. That was live dialogue, and they dubbed in the crowd noise and the music afterwards. So but we were up for the task, and then when we were done with our scenes, they continued to film, and they said, stay out of the frame, but you guys can hang around. So there's a few other scenes in there that I was right around the corner while they were filming it, and it was fun. It was a groovy time, and then the movie did come out, and it was successful, and people loved it. And honestly, my favorite part was watching my name on the credits.
Yeah, I actually did that.
Right. I didn't know if they spelled it right, but they spelled it correctly.
Spelled it correctly, and then I even watched later. There were some blurbs, some bloopers, or not bloopers, but the main one of the main dudes actually, because they went back in time, he became Vince Neil for Motley Crue, and he had his hair long, and they made him up, during the Theater of Pain time, and dude, the guy looked a lot like Vince Neil, even more than the guy that played him in The Dirt, if you ask me. Mm-hmm. The bald guy in the movie. It's hilarious.
Okay, yeah. So, they made a part 2, and I've yet to see it, to be honest with you. And John Cusack wasn't involved in Hot Tub Part 2, and I just haven't seen it. I never went out of my way to see it. I haven't turned on my television in 2 years. I'm not in really any hurry to either. So without John, we weren't involved in it, and and John Cusack's not in it, and I heard mixed reviews of it, but there is a part 2, and I haven't seen it. So, but part 1's a lot of fun. And yeah, that was exciting to be involved in that, and then to actually have it be a success, to actually have it come out was one thing, and then it really did well on DVD. It was a number 2, not number 1. I don't think it made it to number 1 on rentals, but it was a number 2 for a while there, which was cool because considering that I never thought it was going to come out at all.
So the project you're in now, how it's called Wicked Garden.
Yes, and there probably is not. It's so brand new. I don't even think there's a website. You'd have to dig for that footage that we're speaking of. It was a live stream. We were in the middle of 2 other bands. It was done in a film studio here in Phoenix. So that footage is out there, but it hasn't been refined down to the STP set, I don't think yet, but it will very soon. Maybe by the time you air this, and then we're going to use that footage to make a press kit,
Cool.
Work some casinos and do the things that tribute bands do. And
dude, I'd pay. I'd pay to see that for sure. I hope you're out in the casino when I go out there.
Yeah. Well, again, it's playing that stuff, and we're not using any tracks, and it's all live. And the music is so good that I couldn't say no. And it really improved my playing to learn that stuff and to get it right, and and I realized, as good as Robert is, he's got his little bag of tricks like we all do. Like I've got this little finite bag of little tricks that I recycle. And sometimes people think it's brilliant. It's like, no, I just doing the same thing I always did, maybe with a new, and I'm like, after learning Robert's parts, I'd like, he's got his little bag of tricks too. They're better than my tricks, but he does have his little thing. And so, I think I'm going to borrow that one here and incorporate that one. Yeah.
I can't wait.
He's the man. That guy is a terrific and very inspiring, player to learn his stuff and want to honor it. You want to play it with the you want to play it well, and it brings out the best in me as a player to play that stuff, and that's why and some of it was right on the fringe of my abilities, but still within them, and that's so he's I'd say the pinnacle of what rock bass playing, the possibilities of what you can do to make the bass an important component in the music rather than just follow along, with what the root notes are, what the guitar is doing.
Sure.
You can tell a story within the song, and that's when you do that, you're onto it, and that's what that dude does.
Yeah, you're gonna kill it. You're gonna flatter the shit out of him, I'm sure. When you do it right.
Yeah, and it's just fun. In fact, I'm excited just talking about it for the next thing that we'll do, and get some. People are starting to work again, at least here in the West. People are getting, gigs are coming, and so I'm excited to play those tunes again, and with even more conviction, because I did kind of cram to get it together for that video shoot.
Well, in the short time I've known you cram a lot, and I mean, you're serious about your craft, and you pull it off on stage.
Thanks.
Brilliant.
Thanks. I mean, I've really grown to appreciate.
There's not many bass, like I'm real picky at watching bass players, man, and I take in everything I see. There's moves of yours I steal, and will steal in the future.
I stole them. You can steal them all you want. I'm wearing my Keith Richards ring right here. I stole a lot of my moves actually from Keith, who is a guitarist, but I was enamored with his whole thing, and still am, but so I incorporated that into what I do. And then little here, little there, a small percentage of that stuff is original to me, but most of it I borrowed from the dudes that I dig. But
badass,
come to find out, that's what they did. they borrowed from the guys they dig. So it's just the cycle goes on. You know, the wellspring we're all drawing from.
Yeah.
We're all thieves. We're all stealing from each other. So that's the blessing. That's the beauty of it. And now with YouTube, it's just you can go. I call them rabbit holes. You can just. It's wonderful, man. I'm glad I didn't have it coming up. I'm glad I had to learn the old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
But it's a valuable tool to have now.
And how long will YouTube be around? Oof, I don't know. It's hard to imagine it being gone right now. But
yeah, maybe there's something better. Maybe there's another platform. But the concept of it is even just us being here, able to do this, and but for musicians and aspiring people learning, again, when you're a kid and you want to learn a Stone Temple Pilots song and you can find the actual recording of the isolated drum track, or you're a singer and you can find Scott's actual vocal, not a mimic,
yes.
the actual track that you've heard all these years, and it is spellbinding. I go down that rabbit hole for hours. And that's why that dude's channel, man, when it went down, he had Sade isolated tracks from Sade Records. They were amazing. And I don't know where this guy got it. I was just like, luckily I was able to exploit it when I needed it for my STP project.
Huh.
And then it went away. It's just not there. So I don't know if he got a copyright strike or, but thank goodness it was there while it lasted. And if you dig enough, you can find. I'm a geek. I'll listen to, the isolated anything from any song that I like, and then I spent hours one afternoon with the song "Give Me Shelter" by the Stones.
Great
Every
song.
Isolated this, isolated that. The chick's vocal is stunning. It's bone chilling. But anyway, I remember like spending 2 hours listening to the isolated left guitar, the right guitar. It was so exciting that all that was accessible and not just the original recording, which is great, but to break it down into its components. And sometimes you hear things that you're amazed made it to the final mix. There's Doors recordings where Robbie's hitting all kinds of clams on the guitar, but somehow in the mix, it just works. There's just a certain potency to that take. And I love it. I love it. I love YouTube for that. That's one of the main things I do on YouTube is isolated recording tracks.
I'm excited for you, man. So how can people probably find you on YouTube? Through Wicked Garden and
well, YouTube, let's see. I don't have my own YouTube channel, at least not yet. Maybe I'll eventually. I'm really not that active with social media, but
when I find out when you guys are
Facebook.
playing, I'll make it known. But
Facebook. I have a Facebook page with my name, my last name, which is MacDonald, M-A-C. Important to clarify that because, and it should say either Phoenix or Scottsdale, Arizona, as my city. Scottsdale. And I usually have a picture of me with a bass. Rare that I don't have a bass because I pretty much use that for music, which has been slow for the better part of this year. Yeah. But I do have a page, and if people write to me, I do reply.
Well, listen,
I also have Instagram. I'm on Instagram. I use that even less, but I am on there as Chad MacDonald 1971.
Oh yeah, I think we're following each other now. Actually, as a matter of fact.
And you can put that in the link. You put my. I used to have my own website, but I let the domain lapse, and I haven't. One guy wanted to buy it from me. Obviously, someone with my name, and at the time I was active I think it was when I was with Jani back in the day, and I was like, no, I'm going to keep the domain, and I didn't. I let it lapse. Yeah. Maybe I'll get it again sometime, but I'm really not that active online, to be honest with you. But I probably should be a little more active once this project gets up and going, and then other things pick up.
Once the world starts.
It's a valuable tool. It really is. But if people hit me up, I do reply. It might take me a few days, but I always reply.
You next time you're in Florida, you better come to BuzzTown Studio here.
We'll do a sit down. We'll get 2 bases and we'll
that would be cool, man.
Trade ideas and hopefully I'll have a gig too to tie into the visit.
You're
That would be
always
great.
welcome here, man. You got a place here. You know, it's your own little resort, small
I
little
love
resort.
Florida. I know some people that don't. They can't. But I can handle the humidity. Um, I love the ocean. I love the life of Florida, the plant and animal. I dig it. I've always
Yeah,
liked it. But
yeah,
um, and I got a good mate down there too,
yeah. That's right.
who's launching a brand new podcast channel. So
Launching a brand new podcast. We're playing a lot of music. We're going to be launching rockets. I mean, they're going up every week now, Drew. So, manned space flights coming back heavy, probably spring next year.
is that the
So,
postulation?
yeah. So, you know, you got a place, you know, and you come here to visit and hang out.
You
There's
know
a
what?
lot.
I'd also like to time it with a launch. I've never seen one.
Yeah,
I've never seen, in-person visual space launch. That'd be exciting as it gets. So
absolutely.
count on it. I'd love to come.
I will. I will. We're going to stay in touch. I love this, man. I love you, dude. Thank you very much for doing this. This
It's
is a
been a
really
joy.
good.
And if we miss anything, we could always do a part two and maybe dissect some recordings. And you've inspired me to want to dig up some of that old Flame stuff. And I think you'd really, since you've already said you dug what you did here.
I did.
Again, there's those two full-length albums from the two different phases of that band, and even I'd like to hear them again. I haven't in a long time, but they're
Let's
out
see,
there. So
let's see what we can do about finding them.
yeah. I know my first stop is tracking down Peter and seeing what he's got. He's probably got a pristine shrink wrapped copy,
Yeah.
and I don't even have any copies of it, but they're out there. And again, I'm proud of what we did. That was a fun time, and I don't think I've ever worked as hard since before or since that those days. That was we were working hard and moving forward, and it was even if we didn't make it, it was worth all the effort.
Well, I'm sure all that work is what helped you get to where you're at right now, for sure.
That's right. And again, when the music stands up and holds up, then that is success. It's doesn't have to be a platinum album to be something that you can consider a success. So yeah, it's fun to talk about those days and revisit those times.
I want to pick your brain more, but I'm going to let
Part
you get.
two. We'll do a part two.
Yeah, this was good, man. I love this. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, and I want to thank Jeffrey for letting me use the equipment here to pull this off, and thank you so much.
Very cool.
And we'll also talk about the Geordie records that I played on, and maybe if you do a compilation of links, some of her stuff is
Yeah.
And we're going to be working on a new record here in Phoenix in the very near future.
That's what I'll do. If anybody, watches this and wants some feedback or some information, make sure you hit the subscribe button so that more stuff can come out and you can see it. And then I'll put some links down to everything you're doing. And we'll get this new year rocking, man.
I'm in.
Get it back. Get back
Yeah,
to
I'm
music.
excited. And
right,
maybe we'll do a part two and more get into more minutia and specific stuff if you want.
Heck yeah. I look forward to it, man.
But yeah, it was fun taking the Wayback Machine too. And there's other things we didn't even cover, like
we got the nitty gritty. We get the nitty gritty on Chad now. Now there's going to be something out there.
Playing on military bases in the Far East. That's something we didn't cover, but that's exciting, fun stuff too. We'll get to that. We'll do that in part two.
Yeah, and Elvis fronted bands.
Sure.
Wasn't there an Elvis?
There was an Elvis. Yep. There was a heavy metal Elvis tribute that I was part of for a little while. That was completely brilliant, but it was short-lived.
Yeah, looked pretty good to me.
Wow, you tracked that down too.
Oh yeah, I tracked it down.
Wow,
we'll
you're like a private investigator.
Maybe I'm moving into my craft. I don't know.
Good.
But
all right, Brother Steve. Well, real pleasure, and thanks to anybody who's listening. And I'm sure I left a lot of important people out of the story. But again, this is our first time,
yeah.
So we'll do a part two, and we'll cover everything that we didn't cover in this one.
Yeah, and if you can ever catch Chad playing, Chad MacDonald, man, he puts on a show. It's fun.
Oh,
All right, man, brother. We'll see you later.
Cheers. Okay.
Peace out.
Good night. Peace to all. Bye-bye.